Welcome to Unmasking Social, where we talk about building real friendships and meaningful connections without masking who we truly are. I'm your host, Sharon Baum, a speech and language pathologist with an expertise in social thinking and how it relates to autism and ADHD, specifically with our teens and tweens. Let's dive in. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Unmasking Social. Today we have a wonderful guest, and I'm not being biased just because she's a fellow SLP who lives in New York who also adores the middle school population, the teens and tweens, and even the high school folks. And I'm not just saying that because I followed her for so many years before and got some tips and tricks when I was struggling to get through to some of my middle school students, but Hallie Sherman is on this podcast today, and Hallie Sherman is someone who has made it her mission to really help support all of the SLPs on all fronts, in all school settings, and even beyond the school settings, to work with our teens and tweens so that they can understand just how to build a positive rapport with us and how we can comfort them and how we can really not just throw worksheets and expect them to stick. It's more than just a worksheet. Hallie, this is going to be such a fun podcast because both of us, are aligned on so much, and we're both SLPs, so we could just talk forever. So can you take us back to how your journey started as an SLP and how it evolved into working with the middle school population, becoming really passionate about the teens and tweens, and then now where you're at with Speech Time Fun?
Sure. So when I started my career, I graduated from my master's in 2007. And at the time, there was plenty of positions in a school, but I had zero experience. So no one wanted to hire me. So I ended up doing my CF in a preschool and realized that it was not for me. Let's just say I survived it, but it just was, I knew I couldn't do that for decades.
Yeah.
It was just not.
We get it. I'm on the same page. It's just you have to know the population that you really want, and that's a specific population.
And I put my resume out in the springtime, okay, you know what, let's just try again. And at this time, the market shifted, and all of a sudden, there were no positions.
Oh, dear.
In a year. All of a sudden, now I have a year of experience.
Yeah.
So this was 2008, 2009, that around that time when all the stuff. So coincidentally, I got an interview in a middle school for a leave replacement, and I somehow got to the demo lesson, and I ended up getting the position. I had zero experience, but I was just determined to get out of the preschool. So I got the job, and I survived to tell about it, but I was like, they still get speech in high school? They still get speech in middle school? I was pulling them out of lunch. It was a survival mode, but it was a leave replacement. So after that, I went back to an elementary. I was hopping from leave replacement to leave replacement. And I was feeling a little down on myself. And then I finally got another leave replacement in a 5th and 6th grade building. Again, disappointed, but grateful to have a job. And at this point, I was like, I saw on Pinterest, Pinterest was just getting started, and I saw a lot of teacher ideas, but there was no speech ideas. And I saw some things that I was like, I can use that idea in speech. So I changed the caption, and people, all of a sudden I saw my ideas floating around Pinterest. And I'm like, I'm onto something here. So I started a blog, Speech Time Fun, back in January 2012. And I didn't think anyone was going to read it. I was like, this will be just a therapeutic diary of my therapy ideas. And sure enough, people found it, and people were asking me to keep going because there were no ideas out there for working with older students. And I ended up getting a tenure track position in that school. I ended up working there for 13 years before I started doing this full time. But I realized that I wasn't taught how to work with this age group in graduate school. I made a lot of mistakes. I had students say some very choice words to me over the years, and I had to start making my own materials because I needed it for myself. And then I shared it on Teachers Pay Teachers, and then I eventually started my own membership because I wanted to be able to help SLPs get there easier and faster than I did. If I was struggling, someone else must be too. And if I can find something that worked with my students, I want to share it with the world. And now it has become my mission and my passion to not only help SLPs just connect with their students and help them, but just stay in the field, have their students love coming to speech and love learning, and realize that they potential that they can have, the fact that we can build our students' confidence and impact them in so many different ways. Like I loved being the one person in my like in the building in my students' day that they could trust. Like I love that. Like they would ask to go to the bathroom and stop by my room.
Mm-hmm.
Like in the beginning of the year, like when they found out they still got speech in 5th grade, they were like, I didn't sign up for this. But then after a while, they were like seeking me out. And I realized I was onto something and I wanted other SLPs to be able to have that same experience.
Wow. I can relate to you on just pretty much every point you made, except for the fact that it was after 2008. I think it was 2011 I graduated, so I missed the whole crisis. So I actually was placed in a middle school and I was happy about it because I knew that I always wanted to work. Actually, I wanted to work with adults, so my journey also took a detour, but that was the closest thing to adults is, adolescents, high school. So, but it was interesting because I found people like you as I was working that were placed accidentally in the middle school, like to no fault of their own, and they didn't want it, and then they couldn't leave it because they fell in love with it. And I really relate to what you were saying about how there was just so much, even at that point, so much about preschool, so much about articulation, right? But then the whole language piece and even the social piece was just not really up to par or up to snuff. And we're trying to be creative and we're trying to like build rapport and make this environment as comfortable as possible, because it's, again, the teen and tween years are just so beyond not what I want to go back to. And then at the same time, you also mentioned how eventually some of these students would start seeking you out for support, not even during their speech sessions. And I have found the same thing, that a lot of times we're not just speech language pathologists, like we're also support, we're mental health support, we're counselors, we're wearing so many hats. And it's the kid that doesn't want to come ends up coming the most on their breaks.
Mhm.
So you have a lot of secrets that are not so secret, just because they are on Instagram. But if you could point to a couple of hidden gems or even things that you find have really helped work with that population that people may not really understand as SLPs, because again, like you said, we're not given the tools to support this population in graduate school. Absolutely not. So, are there any specifics?
Definitely. I found one showing my students that I have weaknesses as well. Like if I came as an authoritative approach, like, hey, listen to me, I'm your teacher, I'm going to grade you, they're going to shut down. And then one, also they know we're not giving them a grade. And so we don't even have any of that over their head. But a lot of times at this age, they've been in speech for years. They're tired of it. And if we come from that framework of like, I get it, you're done. You don't want to be here. Like,
Right.
I'm not even fighting you on that, but let's make the best of it. And having that, like those real, true, deep conversations of why are they there? How can we get the most out of it and work with them towards their personal goals and desires, which might not be school? Because I always thought, okay, I'm helping you to do this so you can do well on your homework or well on your ELA test. They don't care.
No.
So, like, coming at it like, okay, what do you care about? And listening to them and showing them that you care and showing them, like, hey, we're doing this random activity, but it relates to this, which is something. And the fact that you listen, like if they tell you that they did something over the weekend, remember, ask
Hmm.
them about these things. Like you never know what it means to them to have someone actually listen and care.
It's so true. And I've worked with different populations of different demographics and socioeconomic statuses. And one thing I found just along the whole line is that all of them needed some TLC. And we are those people in the school. We have OTs, we have other related service providers. I mean, it's kind of a weak name for us, but we're much more than just related services, that we have the luxury to work with our individuals and really listen. When you have a whole class, it's really difficult to know, or to pick up on signs of maybe the student struggling in ways that maybe we are aware of, but the teacher isn't. And so you said really listening to them obviously is a big deal, because like you said, it's not just about getting good grades in school. It's about what you want to achieve, right? And I find like that's a very strength-based approach, an interest-based approach, where you're really
Hmm.
focusing on the interest and saying you want to do this. Well, these are the things that you need to do. So, are there specific ways that you speak to the individuals you're working with to allow them to really feel comfortable even sharing their personal goals? Like, because I know a lot of them are a little bit reserved in the beginning to even kind of share those personal goals, you know, because
And that's where it takes.
some of the goals are funny these days. TikTok, you know, influencer.
That's fine. If that's motivating to them, I've had students that like, wanted me to be their matchmaker. And I was like, let's use that following directions. Like, you need to listen to the girls telling you about it. So we need our listening comprehension. So you can easily find any way to make things work. But it's starting from that beginning, that first day, and not
Mhm.
giving up, building that rapport and not jumping into the goals. I know so often we're like, okay, we need the data. We need the data. No, the
Yeah,
data can wait.
right.
Connection before data collection. So taking from that first few days of like, why are they here? What is our role? Letting them learn more about me. I like let them teaching me like, hey, I know nothing about TikTok. I know nothing about Roblox. Teach me about things.
Yeah.
I tell them
I'm still
I
learning.
can't draw. I can't cook. I tell them all the things I can do, and someone in the room knows how to do something that I can't do, and I say, okay, I'm going to teach you things this year. You're going to teach me things this year. We're going to work together, and taking time at the beginning of every session and not feeling the need to jump right in to the goals, like especially when you're waiting for the rest of the group to come in,
Yeah.
settle down, like how are you guys doing? And sharing about it doesn't mean I have to like tell all my deep darkest secrets, but hey, I made this mistake today, or hey, I had like this incident. Make them laugh. Like you might never know. Like I almost say like sometimes like the more cringe you can be sometimes can
Mhm.
crack them a little bit.
Yes.
So just not giving up when they might take a little bit longer.
You sound like such a Gen Zer with the cringe. But yeah, the more cringe we can be. This is also one of
And
the
I'm
things is learning
and
the
I'm not a
lingo,
Gen
you
Zer
know?
at all.
No, I know, but I'm just saying we're both millennials, but the Gen, you're already using the terminology. And I feel like I've absorbed some of the terminology too. Sometimes I just say it without me even thinking, but that's also, you know, speaking the language, I feel like also has been really important in my journey in terms of speaking. Sometimes they'll really laugh and say like, you're not supposed to be talking like that. It's a cringe moment, right? I mean, but bra, exactly. And I'm like, who are you calling bra? I'm not your bra. But no, but I'm saying those moments though are moments of connection, I feel like, right? Like I love what you said. I'm gonna quote you, connection before data collection, you know, and that's really important. And so those first days, I think that people get concerned that they have to start with, you know, the goals, but how can you even start in goals? I always wondered if you don't really know what goals you're going to be working on because summer just happened, right?
Yeah.
And so things change over the summer, right? Individuals evolved,
I mean,
and transitions coming back, right?
well, often like sometimes when the new school year, the IEPs from like the last school year and things like
Right.
that. But I always like this may not be, proper, but I always like to like meet the students first before I really looked at the goals
Yeah.
sometimes.
So I actually totally feel you on that because a lot of times I feel like there's a mystery that needs to be solved, and if I look at it before, I'm going to be biased. I'm going to assume that that's what needs to be worked on. When in
Hmm.
reality, things change, things evolve. Also, clinical eyes. Sometimes you need more eyes on it, and if I meet them first, I can really determine whether or not it's aligned. So that's my reasoning for
Uh-huh.
doing.
I'll be like, okay, now let's look.
Yeah,
I agree, disagree, and then we can change it. But that's really so. Yeah, like they're there, but let's focus on just like all about me activities, icebreakers,
yeah.
and you can informally assess things while you're doing that.
Of course, always. So again, you reach this place where you're working in the middle school, right? And you finally have this position, and you see that again, Pinterest is the way where people are noticing you, and you are starting to, you know, sell some of your things, and you're trying to showcase some of the work. In the beginning, when you were creating these, I don't want to call them worksheets, but these products, right, to help support SLPs, what kind of products do you find were like the best selling or the best hitting?
It was a lot of the comprehension activities, like working on inferencing, main idea, summarizing. There was nothing out there written that looked appropriate for an older student that was written as simplified reading level. I had sixth graders reading at a first grade level, fifth
Wow.
graders reading at a second grade level. If I gave them a second grade worksheet that looked like a second grade worksheet, they would
Yeah,
throw rocks at me. But if I
of
gave them
course.
something fifth grade, they're going to shut down too. So I like to call it the like Goldilocks rule. Like it can't be too hard where they're going to shut down. It can't look babyish, so they're going to shut down. It needs to look like it was made for them, but also we want to get them that quick win. Like you can do this. Like look, you just did it. They don't need to know that it was written at simplified reading level. They don't need to know that. So when we're working on a new skill, we don't want to be competing with the decoding piece, the avoidance piece. all that stuff. So I wanted to be able to use resources that was written at their independent reading level and using their interests. So those were like the first resources that I started making that really took off, that I just kept on making more and more because I needed it too. So
Yeah, and I think you touched on such an important point about confidence. You didn't say the word confidence, but like again, we're dealing with students who are in a stage where they're really finding their identity and really judging and assessing themselves. I find from what I've seen
mhm,
in terms of how smart they are. And even though it looks like they don't really care for some of the students, like, oh, who cares about school or who cares about that? They are measuring themselves up to even just recent stories I have. They are measuring how smart they are compared to their peers. So that's why what you were describing about just giving them something that looks like a few years younger than themselves could totally remove confidence
mhm.
and only through building up confidence I feel like can we really do our jobs properly even though we're not counselors we kind of are at the same time. So I think that's so important to remember, and it made me think of, I usually say this for the end, but it just made me think of, AI, right? I
Mhm.
wonder, there are so many positive ways to use AI, and because you're so creative and so crafty and develop so many good products for these students, do you find that AI helps in any way in terms of just like strengthening lessons or helping with specific types of lessons for these students?
It definitely differs, like differences. It depends on the student. I do like the fact that like you can easily make a visual based
Mhm.
on a story. Like you can plug in a story and AI can pull up a visual to help students like who can't picture things in their head. You can easily have AI differentiate it for you, and there's different tools like there's Diffit for teachers, Diffit, which is like a free tool on their paid upgrades, but you don't even need it. Where you can like give it a link or a PDF, and it can easily adapt it. It's not 100% great, but it's a start if you're needing something adapted quickly that's not already out there.
Yeah, Diffit. It's interesting because I don't think I heard of it, but now I'm going to try it. But yeah, you're right. It's a case by case basis, and I find that their images aren't so great yet.
No,
I know they're
no.
working on
And
it.
and it's, a lot of students are like anti it. So it's really, that's why I said it depends on the student.
Yeah.
I still find the man made things that me and my team make are a lot better than AI because it's made with understanding of the kids a lot better.
Yeah, I mean, robots can only go so far, right? With understanding emotions aren't necessarily their strong suit, emotional intelligence. But no, because it's interesting. It's funny because I remember I kind of tried to make a worksheet. Like this was when I was like trying AI out to like modify things and differentiate. And it was like about a pumpkin patch and there were pumpkins on there and it looked really great to me, right? Looked really great, really differentiated, really for the student. And the student says to me, "Oh, did you do that on AI?"
Hmm.
I was like, "Wait, but the pumpkins look real." But I guess they really can pick it up. And this kid was in like third grade.
And
I
they
was like,
know, and they don't like it. They don't
no,
like it.
they're like I was being called out on. This was not a positive, this is more like, "Whoa, what'd you?"
But that's a perfect opportunity to have them like advocate for themselves. Like, hey,
Yeah.
next time I'd rather a real, but let's Google images like a real pumpkin or something. Like, yeah.
Yeah. And it's so funny because, like, I guess we don't always realize what they're seeing because they're exposed again from a young age to this whole virtual world, which actually brings me to my next point, this virtual world. And I've had other people on this podcast speak to it. Sarah Ward was on here about executive functioning, and so was Michael McLeod, also about executive functioning, and some other, Jesse Ginsburg, sensory, SLP. So many people trying to figure this one out, right? No one has the absolute perfect answer. But in terms of using digital, right? I know that screen time is a difficult one for the kids. And so I struggle. And I know many SLPs struggle with balancing it, but some of your activities include video modeling, and some of my activities include video modeling, right? And some of these videos are great for all the things you described: sequencing, compare contrast, right? Even perspective taking, a lot of the social communication. So, where do you stand on that in terms of using virtual but blending it with non virtual?
If you can't beat them, join them. If you're honestly,
Yeah,
I mean, I'm not saying I'm against using it all day, this
sure.
and that. I'm fully against that. But when it comes to we have them for 30 minutes and I need them to work on their goals, if that's going to motivate them, I'm going to use it. So there are so many videos out there. I like using Pixar shorts and
Those are the
different,
best.
even online. Like, why not use it? It doesn't have to take up the whole session. They're not glued, and they're not glued. I don't like to do like an isolated activity. We're doing something as a group together. So I feel like just a little different. Like I used to have my students, I had a small room. I didn't have a smart board. I had a Chromebook. Everyone just crowded around it. Every once in a while, like we would play different games like Blue Kid or Kahoot where they were on their own devices, but it was an educational game. They weren't there to just like play
Joe.
Roblox. Like,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. And even just as rewards, like sometimes like I second guess, sorry, I'm taking advantage of
No, it's
for
go.
myself as well. But sometimes I second guess myself as we all do as SLPs, we have like a third mind and not even a second. But so I second guess in terms of rewards, right? Like I know that rewards aren't always going to be extrinsic rewards. Sometimes they're intrinsic, right? I mean, that's what Nest was the program that I worked in was all about trying to get the kids intrinsically motivated rather than okay you get a candy at the end or you get this at the end you get it something tangible. Sometimes it's more intrinsic, and the thing is that I've found that sometimes like knowing that they have like some video time at the end can be really a good incentivizer, but at the same time I grapple with, well, are they building up like internal motivation?
And I used to use that as like a last resort. Like
Okay.
I also agreed, like I found if they found that if they understood why what we were doing is going to help them towards their goals and passions and this time we're using their interests and we're using technology and we're using resources that are at their, reading level. I
Disposal,
don't
yeah.
I don't need those rewards, but every once in a while, like they like show me that they like they reached a new level of difficulty or they did something really amazing, like or the session just ended 5 minutes before the end and I have nothing else for them, have some, reward time. So as long as it's not used all the time where you're relying on it, like they need that reward every once in a while, I'm fine with it.
I'm also asking this selfishly because sometimes I find, like, just over the course of my journey of this career, that we all have different styles, right? And related service providers in general. And I have seen that, there are some that will use that, especially for this age group, will always use that as a go-to reward. When you're done, you have 5 minutes on to play on the computer.
Mhm.
So it sounds like this is not shouldn't be like an all or nothing. It should be kind of weighted based on the need.
And again, like everyone has their own styles, and if it works, and go for it. Like I was always like, if there was extra time, great. If there wasn't, no one seemed to complain that they didn't get that extra time.
Oh yeah, they don't complain about that. Yeah.
They'd rather just go back to class, like anyway. So
Although no, actually a lot of them don't want to go back to class either. That's another
yes,
thing about this age, right? So this is funny because right, on the one hand, they don't want to come. But on the other hand, once they come, they don't want to leave because that means going back to class.
yes.
And these days, I don't know, this is also I'm just curious if you've noticed that shift as well with the overstimulation in these classes where behaviors which can be just a cry for help or it could be also just, sensory seeking because of the overstimulating world. I feel like when I walk into classes in the school I'm working at now and just every school really that I've been at in the last like 5 years, it seems like there's been a shift in terms of the behaviors and the regulation. And so I find that a lot of these students are very overly stimulated. So I'm wondering like how do you address that? Because that overstimulation piece is so big. There's no one answer I know to it, but it manifests as behaviors, honestly, right? And so how do you address that while also like being understanding?
So it's very hard to like also you can't like tell the teachers necessarily how to do their job and this and that. But teaching students to advocate for themselves and recognizing what they need. I love to teach students about their learning styles and
Yeah.
letting them recognize like what do they prefer? Are they an auditory learner? Or are they a visual learner, multisensory learner? Do they need frequent breaks? Do they like quiet? Do they like noise? Once they start understanding that, like we practice in my speech room, like how to advocate for themselves. Like I need to go take a
Yes.
break. Like it's getting too
The
noisy in
biggest
here.
thing. Yeah.
Can I go take a break? Or if they need in like a sensory tour or whatever, helping them learn what they need so that like if the teacher doesn't want to like cooperate, like go ask to go to the bathroom, go take a, you know, sensory break or whatever, you need to do.
And definitely, and so the sensory breaks are great. So what I'm also trying to figure out is again in this era that we live in with this overstimulation, and it's nobody's fault except for the times we're living in. Honestly, I don't blame anyone. It's just life evolves. I mean, that's just reality. I mean, there were other problems 20 years ago, and now we have this to replace it, and so there's always fixers like us. But I'm just wondering, like, again, it's so funny because so many people that don't work with this population will say, and I'm sure you can relate to this, like, how do you do it? Like that age, oh my gosh, they're so mean, so many behavioral problems, like they must be like flying off the handles. And the truth is, I don't view it like that at all. I mean, I think it's really like so much like I feel like any age there's going to be behaviors, like I said, the overstimulation. But how do you specifically handle these really challenging behaviors that I feel like have become a little bit more significant? Is there any like approach or anything that you find is helpful or maybe not helpful that people are doing?
The best thing that my best recommendation, again, and it goes back to like not being okay with throwing out the lesson plan. Like sometimes you need to just go with the student's lead. And if they're not wanting to do your activity, like it's really okay. So often we feel like we have to collect that data or work towards that goal. And sometimes that's not what the student needs in the moment. And we can be that person that provides what they actually need. And so not being so hard on ourselves for things to be perfect and just going with the flow and just being like, okay, tomorrow's going to be a new day. Tomorrow's going to be a fresh new start.
Yeah.
That
Yes.
really helps, like in those moments, not take things personally, not
Right.
be so hard on ourselves. And then also relying on the colleagues. People are working with that same student, or asking them, how do you do, what do you do in this situation? And learning from them.
Yeah, I think that's so critical, right? Like leaning on each other because everyone has a different lens, right? Like the speech or even another speech therapist may look at it differently, or the OT may look at it differently from a sensory piece. And then you have sometimes in some cases, not all cases, you have a behavior specialist or counseling, which there's a shortage on everything here in New York City, right? But if you're lucky enough to have everybody, right, you can lean on them. But yeah, no, that's interesting. Not to take it personally, I think is very important because I think that it's so easy to get wrapped in like what's going on in the moment, especially when you have a group, right, of
Mhm.
students and middle school students. And it's kind of like, it feels like almost you're being attacked by many people at the same time. And you almost feel like, wait, what did I do wrong? Doing things right. They should be manifesting some of this personality.
And sometimes it could be something that happened right before our sessions that we don't even know about.
That is so true. And sometimes they don't want to talk about it,
Yeah,
right? So
you
like
might
you'll
not
never
know.
know, and they're not obligated, they're not mandated to speak about something that's uncomfortable. So it's interesting. So you mentioned also like the people at this age, they're starting to realize like, okay, speech is not like this fun town necessarily, right? It may be an escape from class. So for some that's great, but it may also feel like they're being separated or excluded a little bit from others, and it kind of leads them to question their own identity in terms of like, oh no, why do I need this still, like what's wrong with me? And even today, literally today, there was a student that was crying in fifth grade because he just feels like he's getting pulled for services, and it wasn't even speech this time. I was like, oh wow, it's not me this time. Okay, fine. But no, but crying because he's being pulled for for extra support, like a learning specialist. But he doesn't feel like he's with kids that are his own age. He has other things that he's dealing with physically, and he's just feeling very low about himself that he's in this situation. And he just broke and he just cried and he just couldn't take it anymore. It sounds like you have a system set up from the beginning, right, to really concretize the goals. But for those resistant students, how do you get through to those like really highly resistant students or students that are really struggling to show up?
Really depends a case by case. For the most part, like if you start from the beginning and having that dialogue and having their goal might be to not need speech anymore and
Right.
let's work together. And maybe that's it. And sometimes it could be like that they had something that happened in class right before they came to you and they were embarrassed that they got a failing of a test or they were pulled into the back of the room or something like they were pulled for something else and something else happened in counseling. We might not even know about it. And sometimes just going with their lead. I've had students where I let them just sit there quietly. Just sit there quietly. Absorb it. I'm fine
Mm.
with that today. You seem like you're in a mood. You seem like you don't want to participate. I'm okay with that. You have to stay here. And eventually, usually, like they're pretty bored by sitting there quietly that they
Yeah,
eventually just participate anyway.
exactly.
Like, I've had, like, go ahead. I'm not fighting you. Just sit there.
Mm.
And they're like, that calls them off guard. Like, what do you mean? I'm allowed to? Yeah. I'm not fighting you. But if you
It's
want to
like,
get out of, but if you also want to get out of
yeah.
speech, like, this is not the way to do it.
Right.
Like,
It's
so
like
you have to remind them
unintentional
of that
reverse
as well.
psychology. Yeah. We're also master manipulators too,
Yeah.
by the way, for anybody listening. For all those listening, we are manipulators, but no, in the best of ways. But that, yeah, I mean, I think that is a good point to honor the fact that listen, all of us get into moods, right? Like, I mean,
Yeah.
I'm moody. I'm not gonna lie. I get into moods all the time where I'm just like not in the mood to deal with people. And yet, for some reason, we forget to show the same grace to our neurodivergent and neurotypical teens and tweens because we want them to accomplish. We're so keen, especially in our field. I feel like a lot of us like want, you know, the ball to roll, and it's so
Mhm.
hard in the academic world. Speaking of the academic world, I know that you focus a lot on that. That's like your main bread and butter is focusing on integrating this into the academics, right? This is not you integrating this into like a skilled nursing facility, obviously,
Mhm.
or even a pediatric clinic necessarily, although it can be used for that, but
Mhm.
it's really geared towards students that are in school, right?
Mhm.
And what I found to be really challenging also, and maybe you can help me on this, is that a lot of times in the school setting, we're lucky because we're not as confined to the rigidity of the core curriculum, but we should be following the curriculum, right? And we should be going along and doing things that relate back to the curriculum and relate back to what they're doing in class and things like that. However, sometimes they come to us and it's like, wait, no, we're already working on. And I've tried to actually really do such exciting, like felt like I was like doing the most amazing thing, and it just flopped because it was related to like a book they're reading, and it seems like those didn't go over so well. Like, do you find that it's like we're supposed to adhere to the academics, but at the same time, it's like they don't really want to hear about specific academic stuff?
It's true. So, and that's where I've done a lot of research and reading up and learning up on. So we have them in school because it needs to be academically impacting them, right?
Of course.
So, but they all have language goals. But in order to be successful academically, they need language to be able to read and they need language to be able to comprehend and to be successful in the classroom. So I found taking not feeling like I have to do the curriculum and just working on the skills in isolation and just showing them how it'll help them got me a little farther. And again, like using the materials that were more at their level and understanding that, okay, so in order to be a successful reader, student needs like the decoding skills, but they also need that language comprehension. They need the vocabulary, they need reasoning, they need syntax, they need understanding of language structures, all those things. And that is our expertise. So we're actually more equipped to help with reading than reading teachers are. And when we come from that approach and actually even say that to students, like, hey guys, like what I'm doing is actually going to help you even more. Because a lot of times, like they're getting test read in the classroom, or
Yes.
so it's like, let's teach them some language comprehension skills. Let's teach them how to note take. Let's teach them how to compensate for their weaknesses versus just practicing the same thing over and over again that they're getting in the classroom. And I felt that was always much more beneficial and showing them and saying, okay, like I'm helping you access the curriculum by doing what we're doing here. So I might not be, and every once in a while, like you can pull that book off the shelf, like, hey, just like you did this in class, when your teacher asks you this,
Hmm.
versus, I said, like, the curriculum might not be motivating to them, and it might be, and that's where like that, child student led approach is. If that's what's motivating to them, sometimes when they're in high school,
Yeah.
help me just do my homework, man. Like that's what they want.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
if I don't have to do this at home, great. That's motivating to them.
Yeah. No, it's interesting because you're right. Because like some students, with when it comes to like books that they're working on in ELA, they actually really love the book, so they don't mind if you're integrating it in a fun way. But others, if you mention it, it's like, oh no, please stop. Like I've heard this way too many times, and I'm like, all right, I don't blame you. And I had this conversation with an OT also because again, they do push right for you to incorporate things from the classroom, and he said, every time he does, they just shut down. So it's like you want to preserve their ability to have stamina, at least, like you said, for the 30 or 40 minutes that we have them. We don't want
and then
to
and
shut
then being
them
able to
out.
say like I'm working on the skills so that they can access the curriculum versus like
Exactly.
I've had many administrators I had one administrator say to me like they're passively learning in your room because you're reading to them. I go, I'm working on listening comprehension. I don't know what to tell you. Like I have no problem answering back to like whatever
Oh, yeah.
feedback I got.
Well, I mean, yeah, now you don't have to answer back because you're an entrepreneur, which I want to circle back to, right? But no, but it's interesting because, yeah, I don't know if they fully understand the scope. I've always found it difficult for administration to understand what we do and what our role is. A lot of times, I've heard things like, oh, you're the princesses. Well, this was one comment. You're the princesses that sit in the room and, do
Mhm,
have the easiest job in the school, right? And it's so
mhm.
interesting because every SLP I've met has been like so hardworking and so like tuned into like the every need. But that's just perception, I guess, myth versus reality. But I do understand. I'm not a classroom teacher. I never was. I never wanted to be, and I still don't want to be. So I won't be going back to school for that. But I do empower. I mean, for those that are classroom teachers, some of them are just amazing. I mean, the work they do and the collaboration between the SLP and the teacher, is just fantastic. I mean, when it works. But yeah, and so now you're this entrepreneur, you're no longer in the schools. What made you part ways with your the schools? Like, is it just because your business was taking off so well?
My business was taking off, and then I just, I had 2 young kids at home. It was becoming just like taxing on me and my family, and something had to give. And I had more that I can do for the SLP community if I went all in on this. And I just said, you know what? I'm taking the gamble and doing it.
And so now you have a whole team working for you, right? And everybody's pushing out all these resources. And you do use teachers, paid teachers. Do you use other Instagram? Obviously, I know is a big one. Are there any others that you use to?
So I have a membership site, SLP Elevate, where people can subscribe and get access to unlimited resources, new resources every single month. So basically, it's like the TPT resources, but now I'm really just focusing on adding to that instead. And this way, they get not only the resources, but they also get support, access to professional development, and things like that. So
Oh, that's fantastic. SLP Elevate. And so, in terms of word retrieval difficulties, it's been a long day here on the Eastern Standard Time. In terms of the right, so getting the students on board is one thing. Now, one thing I also found was parents, right? So adolescence is already a difficult time, and then you have parents on top of it. And so I found that like I really love working with the parents, right? But sometimes parents aren't as involved as they can be during those years. They may be working 3 jobs. It may be a very difficult family situation, a custodial. Now that I've become more trauma informed, there could be a custodial battle going on. So have you found that there's specific like tools that one can use to access parents that are maybe a little bit more difficult to access?
I think just understanding where they're coming from and their needs. I found as they get older, I found like I don't want to say they care less, but being that open, like that partner with the parents, like, I'm here. Sometimes it might be me and the parent against everyone else on the IEP team because, sometimes when I want to discharge them, I'm like, no one else agrees with me. So
Right.
sometimes we need the parents on board to show them that it's actually a good thing that they get to stay in the classroom or graduate. So
Yeah.
just always listening, just like we want with our students and hearing where they're coming from, hearing the parents and showing them that we're on the same team as them. Because sometimes they don't understand the whole IEP process and CSE meetings and things like that.
Yeah, it's true. They don't really understand some of them, and that's why I feel like we really owe it to equip them with that knowledge because
Mhm.
sometimes nobody's telling them or walking with them along that way. And so it's interesting because what people don't always know about this age group is the sense of humor. And that's what always drew me to this age group is that I can share, and be sarcastic and funny. And of course some of them are not yet, on the sarcasm road yet. Figurative language is difficult, right? But you can be funny, right? You can have a sense of humor with them, they can have a sense of humor back, and they appreciate it usually. I mean, sometimes with my jokes, the rolling of the eyes occurs. I would love for you to share, like, what are some of like the funniest stories, or is there like a story that sticks out to you that's like just like so funny?
Well, I always would have a joke of the week hanging up on my wall. So when the students came in, they can read it. And either they made fun of it or
Yeah.
they claimed it as their own. And I'm like, do
Oh,
whatever you guys want to do. So that was just different things, like ways to just like show them humor and also showing them like there's a lot of language involved with jokes. Just again, like something that I love just like making like blunders myself and like letting the students laugh at me. Go ahead.
yeah. Yeah.
Like go for it.
And
Like
they
I'm
will
all for
do
it.
it. They will. It's funny because when they're younger, right, I find like they're a little bit more like, but now they're like willing to just laugh at you, and you're, yeah, laugh at me, laugh with me, roll your eyes. I have this chronic eye roller that I work with right now, who's in 7th grade. And it's like, okay, you know what? Roll those eyes. And then, of course, the smile starts. So curious. Can you share a little bit about like your everyday business in terms of like how it's running, what you're producing, any new products that you're like really excited about, any new projects that you're passionate about?
Sure. So as we're now entering my third school year that I'm out of the classroom, schools, my day is finally a little bit different than it used to be. Now I'm home to put my kids on the bus where I was usually out the door before they even woke up.
Yeah. So tough.
making up for lost time where I was never around and working 2 full-time jobs. Now I'm able to, like, go work out in the morning and, like, do things like that's crazy. Like, I would never be able to do that ever.
Right.
And then I go to my office and I'm either meeting with my team, working on content. I'm always working with business coaches to get coached myself because I didn't learn how to be a business owner in graduate school. So I'm
Oh,
learning,
they didn't
in
teach
the
us
ways of
anything. They
no,
didn't teach
no.
us anything about money. Like, I still don't understand money, by the way.
Yeah,
But
no.
okay, that's a separate.
So like that's really my day now, and I love what I get to do, and I can get to travel now, and I've presented at various state associations.
I
I've
saw you at the SLP Summit.
uh well, I'm at the speech retreat. Summit it was
Oh,
yeah.
that was
Yeah,
different. Oh, okay.
yeah, the summit
Sorry.
I was in like many moons ago.
Right,
Um
but I saw you also, right, the speech retreat, right? But you're traveling a lot more now.
I've been slowing down, but I've been traveling a lot more to go to different state associations and present because those are things that I couldn't do when I was working full time. And then yeah, I just released a book, the Secondary SLP Roadmap, which is now available on Amazon and Barnes and Nobles, and I published that in November. And I was finally able to do things like that, like different passion projects, because I now have the flexibility of time to do it.
That's fantastic. Wow. So from SLP, middle school passion to entrepreneur, and I feel like it's so crazy because in our field, so many people are scared, right, to take that next step into entrepreneurship. Everything, the stars have to align. People never feel ready to really take that next step, and it's so hard because it's a leap of faith in some
Mm-hmm.
level, even if you're doing really well. It's so different, right? We're used to, like, I don't know if you felt the same way in the school system, but like just having that security or
Mm-hmm.
whatever sense of security and then suddenly, and it's like people don't realize it's like optimal security because you got the pension and the this and the that. And then to take this leap, it's so courageous, it's so brave. And I don't feel like enough people are doing it, including myself. Yeah.
No, no. And it took many years for me to get over the fear and do it. And it wasn't until I realized like I was not around for my children enough and something had to give. And it was either my business would have to close down or I have to, leave the school. And I just love what I'm doing more now. I can
It's
impact, I
amazing.
can impact more SLPs. I can impact more students than
Right.
the 65 that were on my caseload.
Right. Now you're reaching thousands upon thousands
Hmm.
across the country. And then with your Instagram following, I'm sure there are people from all over
Hmm.
that are following you. So that's wonderful. Wow, Hallie, thanks so much for being on the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
And I would love to stay in touch with you and just follow all the great things you're doing, including the book you're putting out. And I think that will be an excellent roadmap. And people can follow you, it seems like, on Instagram, on Speech Time Fun, right? And also on your SLP Elevate website.
SLPelevate.com is where you can find my membership, and the secondary SLP roadmap is on Amazon. You can just type that in and find that.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much. It
Thank
was
you.
good having you.
Thanks for joining us on Unmasking Social, where we neurodiverse advocates and those who support them explore how real friendship begins when we start showing up as ourselves. If today's episode resonated with you, please share it with a friend, leave a review, or follow me for more conversations that provide information on neurodivergent ways of thinking, communicating, and connecting. Until next time, keep staying social.